Matt Valley. Welcome to episode number 99 of the Rock and Roll Research Podcast, where we share the super cool backstories and side gigs of the research and insights pros that you trust. I have to apologize for the Spartan background today. I moved over the weekend. I'm in my son's room. It's the cleanest one so far. That won't last long. My computer's on a stack of boxes. I'm living out of those boxes, so give me a break. Hey. Anyway, I'm super excited to welcome my new friend, Kory Grushka, to the podcast. Now, Kory is the founder of a really cool company called Stories Bureau, which is a boutique B2B creative agency out of Philadelphia. And they have a particular expertise, and everybody knows we need this help. They have a particular expertise in helping insights pros land the insights by telling good stories. And I thought that was really super cool. So Kory's journey through and to insights is anything but conventional, and we're going to talk about all that today and a whole lot more. So welcome to the podcast, Kory.
Thanks so much, Matt. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, super happy to have you. So let's get into that. So I know we've talked it a little bit. I've heard a little bit about your story, but it's not the typical background that you hear of somebody who works kind of in the insight space. So tell us about your professional journey and how you got to where you're at.
Sure. So my professional journey was basically one that was, I think, marked by change. I moved around as a kid a lot, so maybe that's kind of what inspired me to change so many times. I seek new things professionally, for sure. I started out as I went to college to be a designer and an animator, computer animator, but didn't want to do the pure creative route. Wanted to try my hand at something academic and analytical. And so I took the LSAT, went to law school, did pretty well, and then pivoted and ended up working at a large law firm as a corporate lawyer for, I thought I would be there for, like a year or two.
Yeah.
Really always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so I thought I would just get a little bit of experience as in the corporate world as a lawyer. Ended up there for 8 years, was there through the Great Recession, moved around in different practice. I was doing M&A, Great Recession hit. So they moved me. They didn't ask me. They told me that I was moving to the bankruptcy group, which was booming at the time.
That's definitely a sign of the times, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. But I ended up getting this like really diversified corporate background as a lawyer in a variety of areas. But I always wanted to get out, and I finally, after 8 years, my secretary's husband started this small creative agency focused on CPG branding and package design.
Right.
So over time, we had talked, and I ended up joining up with him, helped build that company up as a partner. And during that time, we started getting requests from our CPG clients, particularly the insights groups in CPG, to do what amounted to kind of internal communication, storytelling, data storytelling. So we started with PepsiCo, would have approached us randomly to do infographics for a segmentation.
Right.
And that turned into videos, and that turned into, do you do presentation design? Yeah. And it just kind of snowballed within the insight space. Somebody left from there and went to a beer company. So now we're working for the insights group at a beer company. And without even trying, people would leave, go elsewhere. And before we knew, we had half a dozen Fortune 500, mostly CPG insights clients.
Yeah.
And the work snowballed too. Decks, video, newsletters, events. I ended up leaving that company, we spun off a new company, called it Stories Company, which is now Stories Bureau. And we started it about 5 years ago. I started on my own about 5 years ago, exclusively focused on insights clients. A lot of presentation design for insights clients, info and kind of like data visualization. And it has evolved and grown to be well beyond that. We do a lot of B2B marketing work, and we work in the tech space a lot. But still, the soul of the business and the core is on kind of internal comms and specifically bringing insights to life mostly in CPG and tech.
Yeah, super fascinating. And I have a question about this because, obviously as you've seen and experienced, the insights world has had trouble with this over time, and it's been a big conversation topic, presentation topic, all those sorts of things. I'm curious to know when the right time is for you to enter a project. Is it right at the outset where you are doing planning around who the audiences are going to be and how you're going to have to land those insights, or do they call you when they already have the data and say, hey, can you help me turn this into something good?
Yeah, it's a good question. When we normally come in, just as it works out, is when there's been some form of data dump from a research vendor, right? They've gotten the initial 100, 200 slide deck.
Yeah.
They've iterated on it with the vendor, and they're now at a point where the vendor's almost out of the kind of supporting with ad hoc, can you just cut the data this, just make some changes. But
Yeah.
really, it's now with the client team. It's in-house with the senior director of insights, director of insights, and they have the final deck in a very rough format, right? They kind of know what's going to be on all the slides.
Sure.
They kind of understand the story. They know that they need a sizzle video that integrates some consumer quotes, some verbatims kind of thing. And so, sure, we'll do a deck and we'll do a video for you. That lately has been because we haven't really been proactive in terms of kind of seeking out any other work. It's just that's the
Right.
work that naturally comes to us.
Sure.
Where I think we've been most effective is honestly like either program planning, not even specific to a project. And I think that's a really important topic because I think it's maybe the most important thing for insights groups, even if they're not going to work with us. The idea of thinking about their insights platform, you're a VP of insights at XYZ Corporation. You're a senior director that's kind of like planning out what's going to be going on in 2024. Really thinking through what are the tentpole kind of projects that we're going to be doing.
Right.
What are the ongoing, is it brand tracking? Is it what are the key deliverables? There'll be more over the course of the year, but what are the key deliverables? To your point, what are the audiences? How are we communicating through what channels? We have a monthly newsletter. We have, we have budget for, so kind of thinking through even roughly the calendar of work that is probably going to be coming down the pipeline.
Yeah.
And then what are the dependencies? What are the audiences? I think that's something that like Insights really doesn't do very much. Budget planning, they think about the projects, but the next level of consideration, which is okay, there's going to be this project which will kick off in Q2 and it's going to launch in Q3. Well, who's going to be involved? How are we going to socialize it? And like starting to plan around that is to me essential, and one because like the work itself is very important and expensive, but the key is to activate it. The key is to influence.
Absolutely.
The key is to inspire action, and that's done by targeted communications.
Yeah, I really love that, and I see it sort of tying to the annual learning plan as you're working on that. You're thinking also about your communication plan, not on a project basis, but what is the impact that the function is having on the company?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. I hadn't really thought about that.
But also on a project plan, right? Like where we think about insights communication, like we think about like Diageo might think about content strategy for some brand, like what is your content strategy? What's your audience? What are your channels? How much, what stakeholders are there, internal, external to support,
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that. So I'm curious to know, as you think about your background and your route to this, obviously there's some serendipity, like with your secretary's husband and all that good stuff. But what was it maybe about being an attorney that set you up for success in this role? What did you learn from that experience that you applied to this one?
Yeah, so it's a good question. To me, to me, when you talk about this one being supporting insights with storytelling
Mhm.
and with kind of information design, data storytelling, whatever you want to call it, the key to me from an to key to information design to me is hierarchy of information.
Okay.
And I think as a lawyer, lawyers are trained, they're not trained in, I never opened PowerPoint until I got to the creative agency, believe it or not.
Right.
Lawyers don't really open PowerPoint unless they're presenting at some conference. Day to day, it's all in like Microsoft Word, you know?
Mhm.
And so we lawyers work in outline form, you know, everything, memos, things get outlined, memos are built with outlines,
Mhm.
Roman numerals are very important in the life of a lawyer, you know.
Yeah.
um, and so the concept of outlining really forces you to consider, to me that's, it's kind of a core tenet in kind of information design, but it's like it's important in any time you're organizing like any data, any information, any presentation, any speech, any
Sure.
communication strategy, right? Like,
Yeah.
what are the most important things? How does everything ladder up to those things? Like,
Yeah.
where do things fit within those the architecture of the important things, right? So, like,
Yeah.
uh, thinking from you know, like my legal career really forced me, it did a lot for me, I think, but it really, one of the things that's most relevant is thinking from a content hierarchy perspective, from an
Yeah.
information hierarchy perspective, and looking at everything we do, and especially with the insights work, thinking through like, what is the hierarchy of information, what is the
Right.
hierarchy of messaging, right? You build a deck, how is the deck structured? It's really, it should be structured based on, even if you're not actually writing an outline, you kind of should have it in your head, you know, like, where does everything fit in? How are the sections broken out? You know,
Yep.
are the sections at the same level, or are you kind of like, are you putting information at the same order of magnitude that doesn't belong at the
Yep.
same order? Is there really only two things that are the most important things, you know?
Yep.
um, that kind of information organization, information architecture, like just understanding of like hierarchy is something I've carried into the insights work that I think insights people really, really can use as
Yeah.
a kind of foundational skill.
Yep.
And I think I've also carried into creative, because like creatives are not very good at that either, right?
Right.
On the other side,
Yeah.
that's allowed me to bridge creative and I think data in a way that I found to be unique.
Yeah, I totally get it now. It makes a lot of sense because I think, a lot of researchers, like particularly like quantitative researchers, the default thinking is, hey, I've got this questionnaire, it's in this order. So I run all the data tables in this order. And
Yep.
so I start building the presentation in this order. And
Yep.
it doesn't make any sense in terms of what you're trying to learn from the data, but it's just kind of ingrained.
Or what you've already learned from the data, right? Like,
Right.
is sometimes, if it's strategically considered, it might make perfect sense to share beginning to end the way the questionnaire was structured, right? But
Right.
you want to be strategic about it, right? You want to
Yeah.
take the learnings that you've generated and build an architecture from an information perspective based on that, right? The
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right. So I don't know if you knew this about me, but I used to work for Westlaw for a number of years.
I
And
don't.
so
That's interesting.
I have to take this opportunity to ask you the Coke versus Pepsi question in the legal field. So were you a Westlaw guy or a Lexus guy?
I used both. I was probably more partial to Westlaw.
Yes, of course.
What did you do for Westlaw?
I did insights. I did insights for 6.5 years. So
Interesting.
that's why it's such a good product, right? Because of the work that I did back then.
Interesting. I'd love to. We'll talk offline about it because I don't know how relevant it is to your audience, but I'd like to learn more because I've been intrigued by that space for a long time.
Yeah, it was.
Disrupted by AI, by the way.
What's that?
It's going to be disrupted heavily by AI.
Oh, no
The legal
doubt.
research space.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. I am still Team Westlaw. I'm loyal to the company that paid my bills for a number of years and gave me a really good start professionally. So I had to ask.
Nice. Yeah.
All right, so given your background and where you sit today, I'm interested to know what the future of insights looks like for you. What's going to be important?
Yeah, I think that's a big question, and there are a lot of things at play with insights. I think about this a lot. We're going to be launching a podcast, and I'm going to be talking about it a lot with
Oh,
guests and so forth. I think there's insights. I think unquestionably is going to be disrupted, or will have to disrupt itself, right? Or both. Um, I think insights as a group that is the voice of the consumer, that to me is maybe the most important competitive advantage insights has
yeah,
to maintain its stature kind of like into the future, right? What it is, what it means to a corporation. um I think like insights is already challenged in terms of like there's many, insights is essentially data, right? Consumer data. And
hmm,
there's a lot of different business units within most companies, definitely all the big, Fortune, whatever, that are getting their hands into the data, right?
yep,
From CX to UX to insights to analytics to the IT big data group,
right,
data governance teams, um, like and even at the C-suite, chief marketing officer, chief information officer, chief, everything is kind of shaking out right now, and it will be probably for the next 3 years.
hmm,
And I think there's something that's going to happen in terms of like business units competing for ownership of a
yeah,
lot of the territory that Insights has historically covered.
yep,
I think overlaid on top of that is another monumental shift, which is AI. And like, what is it going to look like when AI it's already in the Microsoft, the OneDrive and Teams and like so when AI is like fully integrated in all the Microsoft products and all your data is in this walled garden
yeah,
as a company, that AI can access, can build pivot tables and create formulas and spreadsheets. It's like, so that's also going to potentially challenge definitely the lower level, the earlier career insights people, right? The more
yeah,
of the production work. And so I don't know, I'm biased. I think the insights will be disrupted. You see in different companies where insights is starting to cross over, like I've seen VP of insights that's both VP of insights and analytics. I've seen
mhm,
VP of insights that is really taking over the data function, the big data governance and data management functions for corporations, and
sure,
potentially owning even AI, like AI's data analysis work.
hmm,
Uh, but like it's a question of like the future of insights. I think in some organizations it will collapse down to something much smaller. In some organizations, there's an opportunity to have a land grab. I don't, as an industry, I don't know where it goes, but I think what all these other business units cannot do is become the voice of the consumer, is to actually bring to life actual human beings' voices
right,
and tell, and I'm biased, but like tell stories,
yeah,
inspire, and kind of like become the facilitator of organization-wide empathy and understanding like how their customers actually think as humans, right?
right,
Like we're still a ways away from like selling to AI, like where humans are out of the picture. So
Yeah.
like, so long as your customers are humans, I think that's the one thing that is probably last to be disrupted, which is being truly the voice of the consumer and like influencing the corporation based on what is our consumer really outside of just some data sets, some data points, right? Like intuition, that and not a lot of it is storytelling. I mean, like not to promote the work we do, but um, I think people kind of get that too.
Yeah, that's what feels uniquely human is really uncovering the insights from the data and being able to communicate that effectively. But you said something really interesting there that I think I'm going to just chew on for a while, which is as long as our customers are still human and we're not selling to AI. I hadn't even thought about a world where AI is our buyer, but I can see that now, and it's an interesting thought experiment. So,
Yeah, well, hopefully we're far from that, but yeah, yeah, for sure.
yeah, cool. All right, so this is you mentioned you're launching a podcast. This is a podcast. It's media, right? You do some work in media. Curious to know what media you turn to, either for insights, inspiration, or even enjoyment in your limited spare time.
Yeah, so podcasts are at the top of the list. So my agency, one of the things that's core competency is we do not relating to insights per se, but we do a lot of podcast production work,
Okay.
mostly in the tech space. So I'm very deep into the podcast space, and
Hmm.
some of my favorite podcasts are not really insights related, but I'm a big fan of Scott Galloway. He's an NYU marketing
Yep.
professor, probably familiar. So the
Yeah.
Prop G podcast I listen to very regularly. Um, Lex Friedman, I'm a big fan of. A lot of AI talk, but a lot of outside of AI and kind of general social, political, other business stuff.
Sure.
Um, and then from an AI perspective, this is, I think, relevant to insights. I mean, to me, the best AI podcast that speaks to the latest stuff that is relevant to insights but really marketing is
Hmm.
the Marketing Artificial Intelligence podcast. Uh,
Oh, I hadn't heard of that one.
it's they launch every Tuesday of every week,
Hmm.
and it's about an hour long, and it really walks through like all the latest, but from the lens of a marketer's perspective. So how is this relevant to marketers? A
Yeah.
lot of times the aperture is wider because like you can't avoid the existential discussions around AI if you're
Right.
talking about AI, but it's really focused on like what are the players, what are the latest developments, the products they're launching, and then
Hmm.
how does this is going to impact the marketing landscape, which I think is like really an important thing for insights professionals to be like not just keeping an eye on, but really diving into.
Yeah, that's definitely one I'm going to check out. So I appreciate the tip on that.
Sure.
Cool. All right. So it is the Rock and Roll Research Podcast after all, Kory. We haven't talked rock and roll yet. In fact, you and I haven't even talked music yet. So I'm super curious about your answer to this question because I feel like I can't predict it. I have
Yeah.
no idea. So, Kory, tell us. Okay, you're stranded on a desert island, right? You have 3 records at your disposal to keep you company for the rest of your days of your choosing, entirely of your choosing. What are those records?
So it would be probably something for sure from Johnny Cash.
Yes, yes,
Maybe,
absolutely.
maybe like some sort of anthology, like a Essential Johnny Cash, something like that. So
Yes,
I will say, I know that this is a rock and roll podcast. I'm not like a huge music fan. I like music. I'm
yeah,
more of a movie fan and whatnot. But
it's all
um,
good.
Johnny Cash, um, probably the early Beatles, I'd say.
Okay, yeah.
And then my favorite album growing up was really for working out when I worked out back in the day when I actually used to work out. was the Rocky IV soundtrack. If I was stranded on a desert island and I have to build some structure and I have to do a lot of physical labor, I probably will want to be listening to the Rocky IV soundtrack.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Good choices. Now, I will say that the Beatles is, I think that's the 9th, maybe 10th mention of the Beatles so far in 99 episodes. Definitely the #1 choice thus far. So that's interesting. But you mentioned movies, so let me throw that out there. What movies really speak to you?
Um, I'm a big Robert De Niro fan, so
Yeah.
Midnight Run. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Oh yeah.
1980s, kind of a silly comedy, buddy comedy.
Yeah.
Midnight Run, the Godfather series.
Oh yeah.
Big fan
Classic.
of. Um, yeah. After that, it's like it's very hard to create a list of my favorites. You know. There's
Yeah.
so
Especially on the spot, man. That's something you got to think about.
right, right, right. I'd have to do some research.
We'll give it some thought, because I would definitely love to stay in touch, and we should do it soon. We got some stuff to talk about following this podcast for sure.
For
So,
sure.
so Kory, hey, this has been a great chat. Had a lot of fun. It's been great getting to know you, and your story is it's just crazy. It's really interesting to think about that connection between law and insights. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that in the future. So let's talk soon, Kory. Rock and roll.
Rock and roll.
All right.